Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Jump When You Say Jump. You got it, Dad. My dad's a typical abusive narcissist, and we're super low contact since I've been an adult. My sis and I were terrified of him when we were kids. When I was 17, I had to get to school early for a couple of weeks for debate club. There weren't any buses to take me, and the walk was too long, so my parents reluctantly let me drive to school for those limited meetings. My parents' garage was at the bottom of a very short, extremely steep driveway. One Monday morning as I was backing up, the reverse beeper, installed by Dad as an alarm in case I ever tried to drive the car, alerted him that I was leaving. I had borrowed his bus pass to get to my weekend job the previous day, and I had forgotten to leave it for him when I left. This would cost him an extra $4 total to get to and from work that day. He had a six-figure salary. Anyhow, this was a great opportunity for him to scream at me in public, which he relished. He literally jumped out of his shower and ran outside in a towel as I'm backing up the manual transmission minivan. When I saw him, I instinctually put it in neutral with my foot on the brake. He screamed at me, "Where's my bus pass? Get out of the car now." So, I just got out. The car rolled quickly down the driveway, through the closed garage door, and smashed into his 1960s Mustang. The garage door and both cars were crunched together. I thought he would literally kill me. What actually happened was that the neighbors rushed to windows in response to the crash and saw him red-faced, in a towel, and seething at me. It was one of 2 times my mum actually stood up for me. Just as he began to rage, she said, "You trained her to react immediately when you command her. You told her to get out now and she did, just like you demanded. Maybe you should have let her finish backing up first. No consequences for me. I hope saving that $4 bus money was worth it, Dad." Edit, yes, he majorly sucked, but my kid sister and I grew up to be in happy, loving marriages. We ended generations of an abuse cycle, abusers on my dad's side, victims on my mum's side. Sister and I have both worked through the trauma with counselors and we're both happy. Mum is still stuck with him, so he's peripherally still in our lives. Thank you for your empathy. The next one is titled, You Want to Talk Goals? I can do that. Don't worry, MC comes at the end, but you have to know what led to it. It's worth the read. I worked in sales back during the Great Recession. During that time there were a ton of people looking for jobs and very few jobs to be had. Therefore, employers like mine often saw employees as expendable. Our shop was visited bi-weekly by the corporate officers. They would hold sales data meetings that showed comparisons between how each salesperson did. Not only was this super embarrassing for those who were struggling to get sales during the recession, but you could almost always predict who was getting canned that day by corporate. The store itself was run by some pretty cool people, but they too were under a lot of pressure to perform. We didn't get commission until we justified our minimum wage paycheck. If you didn't justify your paycheck, you had to be prepared for that private meeting with the corporate rep to get fired. Your justification was based on the commission rate of the item, so for example if you sold a $700 item and it paid $14 commission, you just justified $14 of your pay. This, understandably, put the employees on edge and created a desperate and cutthroat environment. Oftentimes you would be seconds from closing a sale and another salesperson would claim you poached their client. "I sold them this $1 accessory 2 weeks ago, therefore this $400 item is my sale." Sometimes clients would walk out due to the arguments this created. Anyway, I was a relative newbie that year, which worked in my favor. I didn't have existing bad blood with the other salespeople, even if they already saw me as competition. So I found a niche in the store, maintained the stock, and waited for the clients to come to me. I knew that clients could smell desperation on my colleagues, and would decline help. So by the time they reached me I just struck up a casual conversation. This worked really well. Most people were willing to work with me because I didn't pressure them to buy and I asked them about their day. I could tell the difference between browsers and buyers, but I treated both with courtesy. A browser could be a buyer tomorrow. So I started racking up sales this way. I also noticed that the company required each employee to sell 2 service plans a week. These were gravy, and pure commission, or, in our case, justification. The problem was most salespeople would wait until closing the sale or ringing up to push these. By then the client was unlikely to be open to add-ons. I tried a different approach. I introduced browsers and buyers to our in-house repair person, who was a stand-up guy. I mentioned that no product was worth buying without the plan, so it was best to factor it in when shopping. This worked extremely well. I started selling 15 to 20 plans a week. This, of course, set off alarm bells with my co-workers. They would see client after client walk out with yellow service slips with my name on it. To them this would only make the bi-weekly meetings even harder. I completely understood this. Now, here is the thing. Could I have kept all of this for myself? Sure. But the workplace was so toxic, the commission was so minimal, and I felt so bad for these people who were just trying to survive that I started trying to build goodwill. It was the Great Recession after all. When my coworker was in a sales slump or had a bunch of sick days, I would ring some of my sales under them. They were often extremely grateful for this. I also started doing coffee runs for my department, even though I was pretty broke. Over time, the toxicity waned and we began tag-teaming sales. Soon other department members would do the coffee runs, and we had a much more relaxed atmosphere, which helped keep clients comfortable and more willing to work with us. The store manager was thrilled with this. He started doing coffee runs as well and patted our department on the back as the yellow service plan slips began pouring in. However, all the while corporate kept showing up, asking for more and more. Even though we actually almost met the previous year's sales, pre-recession, there was the inevitable terror, January. Anyone who has worked in retail sales knows that January is when returns happen. This counted against your justification. To make matters worse, the economy tightened even more, leading to post-Christmas layoffs in other fields. So a huge wave of Christmas returns created a deluge of negative sales that just about destroyed everyone. Corporate held their first bi-weekly meeting of January and chastised us for not preserving the sales. However, we all knew that people who were coming to us with returns were straight up apologizing because they lost their jobs and every penny counted. Within days, 2 of our department members were canned and replaced with fresh-faced teenagers. Corporate also noted that coffee drinking on shift was unprofessional and that no more drink runs would be permitted. Even though we only did it when one of us was on break to get the coffee and the store was at or near empty. Within days, nearly all of the goodwill was completely undone. My co-workers were back to desperate sales tactics, fearful that they would get the axe next meeting. By this time I had managed to get a job with another company to get a few more hours on the side. I had worked for the first place for about a year at this point, and I saw that there was no changing the system they used to bully workers. So I asked my second job at night after the corporate meeting if they would be willing to put me on full-time. To my surprise, they agreed. Full-time work was extremely hard to find. With that I had my out. I went to my store manager the next day and gave my 2 weeks notice. He too was upset with how corporate basically steamrolled us, and he understood why I was leaving. Over the next 2 weeks I gave every single sale to my co-workers, knowing they needed it more than I did. I also divvied up my client list and any unfinished sales to my department members. Finally, this is where MC came in. 2 weeks went by and I was on my last day. It was also the corporate data day. However, I had strategically asked for early enough hours to be able to clock out before the meeting. I hated those things. So I clocked out, handed my badge to the store manager and began walking to the exit. In comes the corporate bigwig. He was early. He stops me and says, "Can I have a word with you in my office?" I shrugged and said, "Sure." Now I was about dead sure he was going to try to lay me off for performance issues. According to my data, I had sold literally nothing in the last 2 weeks because I had given it all away. However, I was already clocked out on this, my last day, so it didn't concern me. He walks me into the reserved office for corporate visitors, yes they had that, and it is just as oppressive as it sounds, and pulls out my file for the previous year. He says, "You and I need to talk about goals," with a giant grin. He walks me through my sales sheets. He notes that service plan sales shot up tenfold since I had arrived. That I was often in the top sales numbers in the store. He enthusiastically started his pitch. Picture this, you become the top regional salesperson. If you could sell 15 more service plans each week, you would beat even the New York branch, which has 4 times the volume. If you sold another $5,000 worth of product, which would be easy for you, you would be our top performer. Ooh la la, a gold star. Thanks, coach. He then said, now that's our goals for you, tell me your goals for yourself. Now, when he said goals, he didn't actually mean my goals. He meant, how am I going to up the ante for them? How many service plans or sales numbers did I think I could hit? I, of course, had no interest in that. Would these new goals come with additional pay? I asked. Well, we can't increase your base rate, that's against company policy. However, if you sold 15 more service plans and $5,000 more products, think of the commission you would make. So what are your goals? Enter malicious compliance. My goal is to leave the company today. The look on his face went from enthusiasm, to surprise, to red rage, the kind of face he used at most bi-weekly meetings. You do understand that the job market is terrible right now. If you were to leave today, all of the great work you did for our company over the last year would be for nothing. We would never give you a recommendation, he said, barely containing his voice. This confirmed a few things. Not only was he out of touch that I was already quitting, he had no idea that I wasn't even an employee anymore as of 20 minutes before. I don't wish any ill will here, but you asked me what my goals are. Is it okay if I leave? He says, I will escort you out. So he storms with me toward the exit of the store. He turns to the store manager and demands, give me his badge and split any remaining unfinished sales. He doesn't work for US anymore. To which my manager, confused, replied, I know, he already quit 2 weeks ago. He fished in his desk and handed the corporate officer my badge. The officer got extremely flustered by this. As I started to walk out, he shouted, you need to clock out now. Again, my store manager said, he already did, is everything okay? That's the last thing I heard from that corporate officer as I walked out the door and trotted to my car. It didn't wreck the company, they are still in business. Last I checked, not a single member of my team is still left there, and the store manager gave me plenty of good recommendations, though I doubt he is still there either. Either way, it did feel good to hit my goal. The next one is titled, We Won't Take Your Word for It. The stone sample story reminded me of a time I was working with a UK government transport regulator's office. They were nice enough people but very bureaucratic. A new motorway was being built some years ago, and they were responsible for ensuring that suppliers for a lot of the hardware that goes along with a big road project met all the relevant standards. They did love their standards. One of the suppliers for the big gantry signs was French, so of course the Brits and French were instantly butting heads. The regulators said they needed a sample of the lights to check for brightness, color, etc. The French said these had already been tested by the French and UK before, etc. etc. After a lot of butting heads, the French suddenly said they would provide a sample after all. 2 days later, instead of the single packing pallet with a light unit on it that they expected, 4 huge lorries turned up at this small government office building with an entire gantry for a 4-lane motorway. Not only 2 whole trailers worth of light units, but all the steelwork, wiring, power distribution, basically a kit for the entire thing. The trucks dropped off the trailers and fled. The trailers completely filled the car park, inconveniencing all the staff for a week until they could arrange testing 1 light unit and sending the rest of it back. Next time they were a lot more careful specifying what they actually wanted. The next one is titled, The $15,000 Equipment is Too Expensive for Your Department to Purchase. Why don't you just rent it for $48,000 a year? Back in the days when 33.6 kilobits per second modems were hot crap, I worked for the engineering department of a growing company. This company had started small. It was privately owned, and the VPs had all put in a portion of their own money to start the company. By this time in the story, they were finally making a respectable 30 to 40 million a year in profits. But they still acted like a small company. Penny pinching. Our engineering department was designing circuit boards with embedded computer systems. And to program these, instead of soldering the microcomputer to the board, we would solder on a microcontroller socket and then plug in an in-circuit emulator that would pretend it was a microcontroller and allow the programmer to create the required program. This in-circuit emulator, or ICE, was made by Hitachi. It plugged into a free PCI slot on your PC and had a ribbon cable that would attach to the specialized microcontroller die that plugged into the socket. It was a mess. It gave our tiny IT department headaches. And it cost $15,000. And it was an absolute necessity for most of our most popular product lines. And there was only one of them. And we were renting it. It cost $4,000 a month. The first month we had it, our CTO and marketing VP planned our whole new product line around this family of microcontrollers. So, at the end of the month, us engineers asked management to buy this for us, since we would be using it for a while. The engineering VP saw the price tag and told us to just rent it. Surely we would be done with it soon. Engineers, being practical, forgot about the objection and just put our noses to the wheel. The CTO and marketing made plans to keep us busy using this microcontroller line for a while. They pre-ordered a few million chips. After a year, the VP of Finance asked about this recurring contract line item. They called the engineer who had originally started the contract. The engineer helpfully forwarded the approval from the engineering VP and his later email asking to buy it, and the VP's reply where he demurred. By the end of the week, this toy was ours. Along with a second one, since finance determined that product rollout was being affected by not enough access to the equipment. Hitachi just gave us the first one, stopped charging us, and never asked for it back. We paid $15,000 for a second one. No one got fired or demoted. But at the next department meeting, the engineering VP tried to tell us that we didn't have enough money to upgrade our PCs. That one engineer spoke up. Would $40,000 cover it? The company found the money. The next one is titled, They Want Stone. Oh, I will give them stone. To start off, I wasn't the one to administer this malicious compliance, nor was I the target of it, but I was there to witness its every step. I work as a interpreter for a foreign construction company in my country, translating between my foreign management and local suppliers. My culture and my management's culture are very different in terms of work ethics, which is a never-ending source of anger and anguish for my employers. That's why, although my job is to convey what they say, I often act as an intermediary when dealing with local companies. Just before Christmas, our main architect insisted on scheduling a meeting with new mason supplier. I tried letting them know that maybe rescheduling for 2021 would be a good idea, because my country is pretty big on Christmas celebrations and we all know that between December 20th and January 10th nothing will be done. Everyone is going on holidays, and especially now with plague around already slowing everything down. Christmas time was sure to be a standstill. However, as I said, the architect was adamant and the meeting was scheduled. Mason suppliers' representatives came and we spent close to 3 hours arguing sizes of slabs. We were informed that dimensions that our architects were demanding are not easy to obtain and would be rather costly, because of enormous losses in raw materials. Which in my home country is a clear message: you need to change your design or find another supplier, because we can't meet your demands. Which is not a message that can be easily explained to my management. Thus, 3 hours long meeting. And yes, one could think that we could go and try to find another mason supplier that could do it, but unfortunately this one supplier is a sole owner of stone quarry with this particular stone that our investors fell in love with. So after long and exhausting fight, our architects capitulated to the idea of changing the design. And when we thought that all is well, our main architect said that our company needs samples as soon as possible, and when supplier explained that as soon as possible means as soon as possible after January 10th, once more all hell was set loose. My management is still not used to not getting their way. In their culture, suppliers will do anything and everything that is demanded of them. And every no they hear, they take personally and think it's just an excuse, and that the supplier is simply lazy. So they weren't open to being understanding after being forced to change their project just a moment earlier. It was another exhausting hour of explanations and demands, where local supplier informed us that samples that we want need to be cut manually. And it's more work than one might think, and with Christmas time upon us, they simply don't have enough hands on board to cut the slabs they already have. But they are happy to direct us to places where their stone was used, so we can see how it looks in reality. That idea wasn't accepted, and it was said that we should be able to see how their product really looks without going anywhere. Finally the meeting was ended with, "Fine, I don't care how you do it, but I need stone and I need it quick." Resigned supplier conceded and meeting was finished on a sour note, but at least my management was somewhat satisfied. Until last week. Our main architect called me panicked that someone called them and it was probably a delivery driver. I called the number I was given, and true enough, it was a delivery driver. I went downstairs, our office is on a first floor, no elevator, and driver looked at me and smiled a little. "Oh, so I guess the package won't be delivered right to your hands?" Now, when I mentioned earlier that we wanted samples, I meant little blocks of material, in this instance, type of stone, no more than 2 by 5 inches or 5 by 15 centimeters, give or take. So when I was pointed to the package, I was surprised to say the least. We were sent full-size industrial slabs of stone, all types we wanted to see. You know, big-ass pieces of stone that are usually used on elevations of fancy buildings. Massive things, but of course, neatly packed and secured, standing in front of our office building. I can't say my management was furious, they were aghast. See, the only way to move the package as a whole is a forklift, but our entrance doors are not wide enough for a forklift to go through. Then, there are stairs to tackle, which is a whole different story. A package like this is secured in pallet-like wood structure and it needs to be broken so individual slabs can be taken out, but we don't have equipment to pack it again if we were to open it. We can't open it, we can't bring it inside, and now we have a new fixture at the entrance. It's been a week since we got it, and for now it's being used as a bench by smoking co-workers. I don't know if there will be a fallout, but as I mentioned earlier, we can't really drop this supplier. My management is quite silent about the whole issue, but one thing is clear, they will not be asking for samples again, as they asked me to find buildings that our supplier mentioned during our December meeting. And I know that my management expects me to be as aghast and annoyed as they are, but the idea of someone in our supplier's company going, "They want stone. Oh, I will give them stone," brings me so much unadulterated joy that my mood brightens up whenever I see our stone fixture outside. The last one is titled, "Wake Me Out of My Slumber to Scam Me, Take This." This just happened about 20 or so minutes ago. The phone rings, waking me up from a sound sleep. Me, hello? Computer, your credit card was used on eBay, blah blah. Oh heck no, you wake me up with this crap and tell me to push one? It's on. I pushed one. Enter hopeful scammer from the dark bowels of a warehouse in a jungle. Scammer, blah blah, Visa credit card used for international purchases. I don't have a Visa. Me, yawning, oh dear, what am I to do? Scammer, yes ma'am. It is very sad. I will need to confirm your credit card information. Can you please tell me the name on the credit card? Me, contemplating coffee, Ronald McDonald. Scammer, Ronald McDonald? Is that Ronald? Getting excited, me, yup. Oh me, oh my, whatever shall I do? Scammer, yes ma'am. Can you confirm, is your credit card gone and where it is gone from? Me, beginning to enjoy myself. Oh dear, it is gone. Oh woe. Is me. I am dismayed. Oh me. Oh. My. Scammer, can you tell me where you lost your credit card? I'm beginning to drool thinking of coffee, me, it must have been at White House Burgers. Gosh. Darn. Scammer, practically bouncing off his chair, yes ma'am. That is it exactly. Can you tell me any strange purchases made on your credit card? Me, well, there was that call yesterday saying someone bought an AK-47. I was wondering about that as I already have one. Scammer, panting from excitement, yes ma'am, voice in the background filled with disgust speaking in their dialect, something that must translate to you idiot. Followed by a slapping sound, silence, dial tone sigh. Just when it was getting good too. Oh well, next time. I need coffee. Thanks for listening.